Social media and public speaking, what do they have to do with space? In 2021, when astronauts applied to the European Space Agency to become astronauts, they have to tell on their CV if they have any expertise in public speaking and social media. Weird, no? Actually not. And let's go through history to explain why. Before we even had space exploration, books such as Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon and movies such as A Man on the Moon really helped in fostering public enthusiasm about space exploration, about planets and about stars. It helped really foster engineers to research how could we go there. And Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who is the father, more or less, of astronautics, even developed the equations to put rocket in space before we even flew. So it's really important to foster this imagination, this enthusiasm for space by using sometimes books, but also having people talk about it and public speak. This became extremely important later on in the Second World War in 1957, when suddenly everyone could hear a beep on the radio. And this beep was actually Sputnik, the first man-made satellite that was sent by the Soviet Union around the world. This showed a massive public threat for the US. They obviously thought, okay, this is bad, we need to get going, and there is now a space race. So this really fostered, and this also got the public's attention that there was a threat and that they needed to be behind the space program that the government was setting up. And you have public speeches like the ex-president J.F. Kennedy gave that obviously are absolutely mythical. Everybody remembers them, how important they were, and to getting the public's attention, getting the public's approval to get to the moon. So 1957, then beginning of 1960s, majority of the people in the USA were for a space race and space exploration and getting a man on the moon. The Soviet Union is a bit more difficult to know what their opinions were, and it probably did not matter as much. Although the budget of the Soviet Union into space exploration was almost as much as the one in the USA, but with an income and a general wealth that was much lower. So the resources that were spending in it were actually absolutely massive compared to the country itself. But probably did not matter in the same way. NASA, on the other hand, well, NACA by then, was, funded by government and therefore by taxes from the public. So you need, in a certain extent, the government's approval, and you also need the public's approval. Now, a decade after Sputnik, there was the Vietnam War going on for over 10 years, and they were about to be the first men on the moon. But tensions were growing inside the USA. There was high poverty, there was discrimination, inequality, and people started thinking, well, actually, no, we don't want space exploration. So the tendency in the population went to be against space exploration. And by the time that the first man landed on the moon, people didn't understand why there was space exploration anyway. I mean, we had one in their mind, the US had one. They had nailed the coffin of the Soviet Union in space. Although the Soviet Union had been winning point after point after point, this was the final thing. And by 1974, actually, NASA's budget was cut by 20% because not only the population had completely stopped wishing for space exploration, but also Congress people thought, well, now we won, so there's no need to go to the moon. And events like Alan Shepard playing golf on the moon, although it seems quite funny, and you think, oh my god, you're on the moon, you're playing golf, it's amazing. And we know that it's not that he went to the moon to play golf. He was doing obviously lots of experiments, and it was a human achievement. But the fact is, this is an image that sticks. And images are extremely important for space. So the image of planting a flag on the moon, the image of the first satellite in space, the first human in space, all these milestones are not only a human achievement, but often they're seen as a threat, or they were back then. If you don't believe me when I say that image is really important, in 1972 tensions were a bit lower in the space race, obviously because the moon was achieved. Korolev, who was kind of the father of the space race in the Soviet Union, had died. So the space race was a bit at a low point. Nobody was trying to get to the moon, or not that much anymore. And astronauts went to the Soviet Union and cosmonauts went to the US, started to be collaboration. And then in 1972 they signed a contract saying that they will do a docking between a spacecraft from the Soviet Union and a spacecraft from the US, called the Apollo-Soyuz docking. You might know, mechanical and electrical plugs have a male and a female part, okay? Normally when you do docking, you also have a male and a female part. But neither nation wanted to be the female part. Why? Because it sends an image, and in their heads that image was maybe weakness. So you can make your own conclusions. But anyway, yes, they could not find a solution until they decided, let's develop an androgynous docking mechanism. So public image meant new docking mechanism. And at the end it worked, and there's actually my favorite picture of space exploration, which is a cosmonaut and an astronaut together in space, holding each other like two brothers or two friends. And at that time it was still obviously the Cold War, but in space it looked like there was none, and that is really so heartwarming and wonderful. So the image of the docking was obviously still like forces playing with one another, but at least this image of a cosmonaut and astronaut in space was wonderful, and it sent quite a nice vibration going through an exit of the Cold War slowly. Then let's fast forward a bit. So budget, how does it have an influence? I said NASA was and is still government funded, so your public opinion is extremely important. During the space shuttle missions, they were trying to develop a spacecraft basically that could land like an aircraft and be reusable. The problem is the space shuttle became way more expensive than they thought it would be originally, and in addition it lost several lives. After the Challenger and Columbia accidents, the public was obviously horrified. They've seen the explosions live on TV for some of them, and it wasn't safe anymore. So in 2010, 2011, they shut down the program and there was no more space shuttle. The fact that there was no more space shuttle meant that Americans could not go to space anymore with their own launches. So they depended on older launches like the ones from Russia now, so the Soyuz. Very amazing rocket, quite old mechanism, but still working pretty well. But it meant that they were dependent. And this fact that NASA was not doing launches anymore, this actually opened the door for private companies. So SpaceX emerged, Blue Origin emerged, Virgin Galactic emerged, and they all started to build their own spacecraft and launches. They all wanted to go to space by their own means. And it gave them much more freedom. NASA is obviously bound by public opinion, it's bound by the government decision, it's bound by any restriction or anything that the country might need. If the country needs more Earth observation, then it sets budget for space exploration. You have to balance out these things. This means that you have the opportunity to be a bit more creative. You can go outside of this administrative-based engineering, you know. Therefore, they've been much more enthusiastic. There's been a massive pool of engineers, there's been a massive regain in enthusiasm, and we're also going back to the moon and we're going to Mars soon. So it's just been an exponential interest for space in the past decade. And you have now analog space mission going on, and agencies also changing the way they work. So NASA is a bit less active. They do have an app where you can see pictures of space and pictures of some missions, but if you compare to the European Space Agency, ESA is using massively social media. They have one astronaut specifically who does a lot of social media, Thomas Pesquet, who some people thought he was on Instagram every minute of the flight. Obviously he's not, he's got a lot of work in space, and he just came back from a 6-month mission aboard the International Space Station. But he's been taking absolutely amazing photos, explaining his everyday life, and really in a way that connected to the public. Astronauts are seen as superheroes, but when you see them on Instagram every day and they make jokes and they say, oh, the food is maybe not that good or this is not that good, well, it helps connect with them, you know. And by doing this, and by what Elon Musk does also, you help get this pool of bright minds and scientists and engineers that will then help build the future of tomorrow. So social media has become extremely important. Public speaking also has become extremely important, just so that you can get the support of the public and more people coming to work for you. I can give you the example for my analog space mission. We were student-led analog space mission, which meant that we did not necessarily have the same budget as an analog space mission where you have to pay. We depended on sponsors and we depended on people just making a donation, right? And there was a lot to pay. I think it was over 250,000 francs, Swiss francs. And the way it happened was the sponsors gave the money, but we had to show what we were doing, and we had to wear t-shirts with their logos, and we had to do lots of public speaking. We had to talk to journalists, we had to talk to families, we had to talk to just the media in general, and try to get people engaged in it, so that not only would we have another analog space mission because we'd have the astronauts and the people who would want to work in it, but also because sponsors would then be interested in funding us because they also believe in the project and they get visibility. This public speaking was actually the only way we could repay the sponsors, so it was extremely, extremely important. And it is also now for agencies and, you know, companies, and it's something you're going to see more and more. So when you see an astronaut, you know, posting a selfie on Instagram, don't think that they're not working. It's actually part of the job.